I want to thank you for coming. I'm Deborah McDowell, Director of the Carter G. Woodson Institute, and I want to thank you very much for your presence. I want to thank especially our visitors from out of town, one all the way from Portugal, Ruthie Gilmore, and for Angela Davis, who has been with us all this week and having wonderful exchanges in our community, greatly enriching our intellectual community as we knew she would. I will be brief here so as to leave maximum time for the papers and for your questions and answers. Virtually no occasion, no official occasion at the University of Virginia is considered complete without the invocation of Thomas Jefferson. It is as if some mention of his many passions and accomplishments will be propitious. And so it is this morning, though not merely for tradition's sake. As one of my colleagues told me some years ago, he says, you think that irony is readily evident. He says, irony is a tutored response, and so sometimes you just need to tell people that you are not necessarily worshiping at the shrine of Mr. Jefferson this morning. All right. So, as I say, though not for tradition's sake alone, we invoke him again. And he's called in these quarters, for those of you not from this university, Mr. Jefferson, with great reverence, as this institution is called the university, with equal reverence, at least for some. We begin with Thomas Jefferson because Jefferson assisted at the birth of the prison in the state of Virginia. In his autobiography, begun in 1821, when Jefferson was at the ripe age of 77, he recounted his early involvement in plans for a prison in the state of Virginia, and I'm just going to read a very, very brief passage. I was written to in 1785, being then in Paris, by directors appointed to superintend the building of a capitol in Richmond, to advise them as to a plan and to add to it one of a prison, thinking it a favorable opportunity of introducing into the state an example of architecture in the classic style of antiquity. He supplied the drawings. These drawings have been lost to time. They were never executed, but Jefferson was closely involved with Benjamin Latrobe, who did indeed design the first penitentiary in Virginia. Jefferson sketches, Latrobe incorporated or certainly worked with Jefferson's sketches as he designed this penitentiary. According to several sources, Jefferson designed the jail in accordance with the then fairly new concept of solitary confinement. He thought, and his biographers have noted, that his thinking on this and other matters of punishment and criminal jurisprudence was considered on the high and humane ground, even on the progressive ground of the day. Jefferson had heard of a benevolent society in England, which was proceeding on the idea, already tried in France, that labor in solitary confinement was preferable to labor in the public works. He procured a drawing of the prison and sent it back to Virginia from Paris, along with various notes, suggestions, specifications, etc. In 1796, Virginia restricted capital punishment to first-degree murder, and that was basically what created the need for a penitentiary house. So as Latrobe is working, corresponding with, consulting with Jefferson, they are thinking that they need a building that would have proper light, airflow, security from fire, a design that would be situated on a woody lot near the James River. Latrobe's rational and humane approach toward the building's design reflected the changing ideals in penal reform occurring during that period. This concept of transforming prisons from sordid places of confinement to healthy, secure institutions of moral reform, I quote here, was carried over from Britain to America, and in 1796, we witnessed this erection of this penitentiary. Now, we have, those of you who read the New Yorker may have read a few weeks ago a long article on solitary confinement. And it is not as if we needed that article to tell us that confining people to solitary conditions impairs their mental health and in perpetuity. That even people who are released from these conditions and who re-enter society even in prison society, terribly impaired. Now, how far, we might suggest, have we come in the roughly 2 centuries since Jefferson's notion of solitary confinement was considered a progressive idea? How far we have come since Jefferson made his contribution to prison architecture and to discussions of criminal jurisprudence. What de Tocqueville early noted when he came to America to tour its prisons, and he came here first to do that. Democracy in America came afterwards. What de Tocqueville noticed retains its relevance still. Social reforms in the United States, he observed, were caught up in the monomania of the penitentiary system. The monomania of the penitentiary system. These are de Tocqueville's words. Believing, as do Americans, he continued, that prisons were a remedy for all the evils of society. This monomania has brought us to the current prison industrial complex, to the point where the American inmate population has grown so large that it is difficult to fathom. And to those who try to wrap their minds around the problem, some have suggested that we resort to imagining the combined populations of Atlanta, St. Louis, Pittsburgh, Des Moines, and Miami, all behind bars. We who organized this symposium are particularly interested in the racial disparities within the sweeping problem of mass incarceration, although this is not our sole concern. As Veshla Weaver, one of the co-organizers, has argued, the criminal justice system represents a new racial cleavage in America. In stark contrast to the watershed political gains blacks made in the decades since the zenith of the civil rights movement, prison has become a normal part of life for 1 in 3 black men in their 20s. While African Americans constitute 12.4% of the population, they comprise more than half of all prison inmates. A mere 2 decades ago, they comprised 1/3 of the inmate population. To these astonishing statistics, we should add the gender-specific dimensions of mass incarceration. The fact that nearly 70% of women in prison are African American or Latina. Women's imprisonment in the U.S. has increased by over 75% since 1977. Most women involved in the criminal justice system are poor and lacking in economic support systems. Most women in prison have little formal education and are severely curtailed insofar as employment opportunities and skills are concerned when they are released from prison. Most of you have heard these statistics and can undoubtedly summon your own. But what I want to share with you as I close my opening remarks is a letter that I received from someone who went onto our website following the announcement of the symposium. And I am going to read her letter exactly as she wrote it, unedited. I hope you will write back to me. I have a very special loved one who has been in prison since the age of 17. What makes this situation so ironic is that this young man is now 28. His name is Enoch Anderson. He was never adjudicated as an adult, and there is no record of his arrest or conviction except in the prison system. This young man was sentenced to 25 years in state prison. The crime which he was charged with was powder cocaine, in which a 20-year-old man had, but said that it was Mr. Anderson who had it. At the time, he was only 16 years old. This is an example of injustice and cruel punishment. Why is it that our youth isn't treated like youth? Why is it that this particular case has no record of arrest or conviction? Why is it our family can't get any help in getting our loved one his liberty and freedom? Our family isn't looking for a handout. We only want freedom and justice to be served for our loved one. There is a such thing as injustice and cruel and unusual punishment, and this is one of those cases. Thank you for listening, and please correspond if you can. I'm sure there are many other people who could write similar letters. We gather here this morning and over the next 48 hours to explore what has brought us to this deplorable pass, to what has brought us to the deplorable statistics that I have just summoned. We want to inform, to exchange, to discuss, to quarrel, all in the interest of moving toward the necessary work of social justice. Before I invite the participants to join us here, I want first briefly to thank the co-organizers, Veshla Weaver of the Politics Department, Claudrina Harrell of the History Department, collaborators in all kinds of ways, Phyllis Leffler, I thought I saw Phyllis Leffler from the Institute for Public History, my colleague Cynthia Haler-Fatton, the Associate Director of the Woodson Institute. Everybody gets upset with me because I'm big on acknowledgments. And always in any event of this scale, and this is not a large scale, but it had many bells and whistles. There are many, many people behind the scene whom I would also like to acknowledge. Nicole Morris. Nicole, you need to stand up and let people see your face. Nicole Morris, who does everything with great grace, alacrity, and efficiency. Daisy Lundy Lovelace is next to her. Daisy, I should say, is not in the employ of the Woodson Institute, but no one ever told her that, because it is our great good fortune that she makes herself available for whatever it is we need. I would also like to thank J.T. Rohn, one of our former graduates, who is back here and who is assisting at all things related to the symposium. Thank you very much for coming. We will not do formal introductions. In order to save as much time as we can, we have printed brief bios of each participant, and so they are there along with their photographs, and we will simply ask them to come. Jonathan Simon is en route. His plane was late, and we will move him to another panel. So the remaining morning panelists, please come forward, along with Eric Lott, who is mistakenly identified as being from University of Southern California. Sorry, Eric, we're not trying to get rid of you.